Welcome to the CRS Workgroup. This is the April, usually March 2023 meeting. Thank you all for being flexible and rescheduling as the Environment Virginia Conference at Virginia Military Institute created a conflict for us last year, and then this year we wised up and moved some stuff around. If this is your first time with our organization, with this work group, this great community of practice, welcome. We are so glad that you're here with us today. And we look forward to learning from you and from hearing about what's going on in your community or in your organization or business or whatever affiliation you are. We're going to get started with a poll. So in the CRS work group, that's it.
Oh, is it going to launch all of them?
Yes. Do them one at a time. Okay.
So we'll just leave it live so people can get through.
Okay, please do not answer. You can answer all the questions if you want, but we're really only looking for the answers to question number 1. That we messed up in making the polls. So you're going to see repeat of all these questions. So we'll see how it goes. You can answer them every time, but you're not going to know what the second and third and fourth poll question are really asking and in reference to. So please just be mindful of every time the polls come up. The polls are the only way that the online participants receive continuing education credits for certified floodplain managers. So you need to fill these out to get your continuing education credits. So for those of you all that are new to the group, certified floodplain managers, which is a certification through the Association of State Floodplain Management, is a certification, and you do need continuing education credits to maintain that certification. And the work group has been very successful in getting these CECs or CFMs every single meeting, and do not need to actually submit anything. All you need to do is participate in polling, and Wetlands Watch coordinates with the CEC coordinator at ASFPM, and we get it automatically added to your account. It may take a couple weeks, maybe a month or two to actually get uploaded and to be visible on your CEC dashboard, but you don't need to do anything to get the credits. Okay, we're going to do introductions. Let's see, we have 29 people online, so we're probably not going to do full introductions of folks there. We will ask you to introduce yourself if you are new. So first we're going to do the people in the room. Everybody in the room will introduce themselves, and then we will turn to first timers in the Zoom. And first timers include first time you've ever participated, and then first time you've participated in a new position. So this is to capture Carolyn Eves-Magaro, who's on the line in a new position. So it's a nice little loophole for her. So let's turn to people in the room. My name is Mary Carson-Stiff. I work for Wetlands Watch. Wetlands Watch is the convener and chair of this community of practice. And our organization is a nonprofit. We're based in Norfolk, Virginia. We work statewide on nature-based solutions to climate change and sea level rise.
Do you mind expanding the camera of the videos over there? Now, up the top right, so I can see where I'm turning the camera. Like go back to the
yes, possible.
All right, turning the camera over. My name is Madison Teeter. I am Wetlands Watch Project Manager. I assist Mary Carson with CRS Workgroup, and I also do work spreading outreach about the Community Flood Preparedness Fund to localities. Pass over to our other friends in the room.
Sure, I'm Jenny Sneed. I'm a PE and CFM working with localities on CRS and floodplain issues, and I'm Amor Thomas. Deirdre Wells with James City County, CFM plan review and help Mike Wilson out on floodplain and needs.
And James City County is a
class
5, 25% annual discount.
Good morning, my name is Annette McConnell. I work for them and I am a recovery mitigation specialist. I'm here just as a report and collect any concerns you might have for VEDA.
Okay, new VEDA representative in the house. Thank you.
Ken Hinkle with York County for class 7.
Okay. All right, so the poll is not taking people's responses. If anybody else is having problems with the poll, please send us a chat so we have documentation of your challenges. We're going to keep the poll live. Okay, so now we're going to turn to people on the Zoom call. If you are new and new to a new position or new to this work group, please introduce yourself. I'm not going to call. Julie, I know that you're speaking, but you're muted.
Okay, unmute. Can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
Hey, I'm Julie Floyd. I'm from Northampton County. I just started this job as a outreach, environmental outreach and floodplain manager, and some of the GIS information, which I know nothing about any of it. So I'm here to learn. I know a little bit, but not a lot.
Julie, thank you so much for being here. We're really excited to have a Northampton County representative. Wetlands Watch has come to your county and provided a kind of full day CRS deep dive workshop in the past. And so it's really nice to see somebody participating in this work. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, who's next online?
I'll go. Hi, everyone. I'm Carolyn Heaps-Picaro. Formerly with the City of Hampton, I recently started working with DCR. I am now the floodplain or flood resilience planning program coordinator. A little bit of a mouthful, working with Matt Dallin. So I'm excited to be here, and I know many of you excited to continue working with you in a new capacity.
Congratulations, Carolyn, on your new position. So exciting.
Thank you.
And for those that don't know, the kind of the shop that Carolyn is working in at DCR is responsible for implementing the statewide and coastal-wide flood risk and resilience planning initiatives that are underway. And so that is going to be a lot of what Carolyn is doing. And so Carolyn and Matt Dallin are the two staff at DCR who are heading up those efforts. Okay, who's next?
This is Mike Wilson, James City County. Like Deirdre said, we're class 5. I'm in charge of the CRS program, and we are eagerly awaiting our 5-year cycle review sometime this year.
Great. Thank you, Mike. Anybody else? I know that there are new people to our group.
I'll go MC, Tom Coghill, also with James City County.
Hey, Tom. Okay. Nobody.
Good morning. I'm Kathleen Bison with the town of Ashland. I took the CFM training in December, so I'm still figuring my way through all this stuff.
That is great. Welcome, Kathleen. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
How about Belita Bass? Have you introduced yourself? If you participated in the past, my apologies, but I don't.
No. Hello, my name is Belita Bass, and I'm sitting in for Prince William County. They're in training this week, and so I'm just here to observe and take notes.
Excellent. Thank you for being here. Okay, I think that was everybody. All right, so for future meeting dates, you can see the dates that are on the screen. So far, no conflicts with these dates. As always, if there are major conflicts, whether it's a statewide event, important training that would pull a lot of our work group membership away from CRS work group participation, please let us know and we'll try to modify. The Hampton Roads Planning District Commission has very generously offered one of their rooms as backup anytime we have a conflict in this space. And so we do have some flexibility. It's just important that y'all keep us updated about potential issues. Okay. All right, so as I mentioned, the continuing education credits, we work hard to get you CECs every single meeting, and you can see the credits that have been approved in the past, and we'll just keep submitting them and you'll keep getting credits. This is our every meeting plug for the Virginia Floodplain Management Association. VFMA is a big partner of this work group and a big supporter of floodplain management statewide. This is a very inexpensive membership, and it's important to help provide scholarships for folks to attend big conferences, lots of training and workshops. Actually, Madison and probably some of you on this call today attended a workshop that they co-hosted yesterday at the City of Virginia Beach. And CJ presented at that meeting, and he's presenting again today. So big kudos to CJ for being on the circuit here. But this is our plug. Please join the FMA. We always try to highlight the ISO representative for the state of Virginia. ISO is the Insurance Services Office, and they are a contractor that FEMA uses to manage and run the community rating system, or the CRS. And it's important that we know who our ISO representatives are in the event that you are having issues with delays associated with your cycle visits or recertification. If you have questions about ways that you have been scored in the past or ways that you seek to improve specific activity scores, Emily is your gal. She is the person that you really should be reaching out to. And she's very responsive and is almost always in every single one of our calls. And it's just been a good resource for Virginia. So please note her email. And if you ever need her email or phone number, you can just email myself or Madison and we'll get it to you right away. Okay, with that, we are going to hear from CJ from the City of Virginia Beach. CJ is going to talk about this really amazing, innovative, super cool marsh restoration project in Back Bay. And if you haven't seen this presentation, it's way cool. And they're piloting a practice that has never been piloted on the East Coast before. And it could be something that a lot of our coastal communities and even some of our riverine communities can replicate in your own backyards. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing and turn it over to CJ, who's presenting online from Virginia Beach. Thank you so much, CJ.
Thank you. I am not able to share my screen.
Yep, I'm sorry, working on it. There you should be good to go.
All right, share. There we go. All right, well, good morning, everybody. I'm here to talk to you all about our marsh restoration and Back Bay project overview. I'm going to cover the project site, the need for the project, the benefits of the project, go into a little bit of the data collection and design and what our plan is for project implementation. Our project team, the city has Dewberry as our lead consultant on this. They brought a number of different organizations in to assist with various aspects, including geotechnical work, wetlands, renderings. And I want to, of course, point out our partner is the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service Back Bay National Wildlife Refuge, because the project site is actually located within their proclamation boundary. Also, we have a number of supporting stakeholders, including the Virginia Department of Wildlife Resources, the Back Bay Restoration Foundation, AppNet, the Governor's Office, and the main one I want to point out is NIFWIF. We have received 2 separate grants from NIFWIF. We received one back in 2019 to actually help assist with the design of this project. And we were recently awarded $9.8 million to assist with the construction of this project as we move forward towards later this year. So part of our sea level rise adaptation strategy, we had a adaptation vision for the Southern Rivers. Part of this adaptation vision was how we can adapt the city of Virginia Beach moving forward to protect us against sea level rise. And one of the big things that we saw in the Southern Rivers, because of the low elevations that are there, is natural infrastructure is something we definitely want to pursue forward with. This project is going to be the first line of defense against sea level rise in the city of Virginia Beach's southern watershed. Project site is located within Bonnie Cove. Bonnie Cove is right next to Long Island, which is the big island you see. I'm hoping my cursor is showing up. What you see in this little rust color here is actually from an 1869 map that we have that shows the coastline within Back Bay. That is all wetlands that has been lost within Bonnie Cove since 1869. What we're looking is there's been about 260 acres in this area that has been converted from marsh into a shallow open water channel. The site's about a ½ mile wide and about 2 miles long. You can also see that there is an area right over here where there's been a lot of degradation, but this is known as the Great Narrows. And the Great Narrows is the main boating access from the northern parts of the bay to the southern parts of the bay. So when we went out in this field with the Department of Wildlife Resources and the Back Bay National Wildlife Refuge, they suggested we look at Bonnie Cove rather than look at doing something in the Great Narrows area. The issue in Virginia Beach is the Back Bay doesn't experience the diurnal tides that you see everywhere else, being located 90 miles north of Oregon Inlet. The tidal effects doesn't get this far north, but it does experience a tide whenever the winds blow from the south for a sustained period of time. If the wind blows from the south for 5 days at about 12 miles an hour, it can raise the elevation in the northern parts of Back Bay by 1.5 feet. When you have essential roadways adjacent to Back Bay that range in elevation from 0.8 to 2.3, this causes repetitive coastal flooding to occur. The wind tides also have become more frequent and intense in recent years, primarily because of the almost foot of relative sea level rise in the last 50 years and the loss of the valuable marsh and aquatic vegetation habitat, which allows the water to be able to push up faster into Back Bay. The pictures that you see here are areas in the southern part of the city where we have experienced flooding. I want to note that these areas where you're seeing is all based off of a wind tide. There was no rain occurring when you see these flooding pictures. So you see a very great amount of flooding that occurs. It impacts buildings, impacts roadways. We want to make sure that we can keep the southern part of our city, which is our agricultural base, which is our third largest revenue generator in the city. We want to keep it active and healthy. I mentioned earlier there's been an ecological decline in Back Bay. The yellow line is the historical shoreline from 1869. Analysis has indicated that increased sea levels and ecological decline are significant contributing factors to the increased flooding. Over the past century, over 2,000 acres of marsh habitat has eroded into open water. and over 70% of the submerged aquatic vegetation has been lost. As a result of this degradation, we've lost lots of habitat, which serves as good feeding grounds and breeding grounds for fish and other aquatic animals. I do want to give a shout out to the Audubon, North Carolina. They created a report recently talking about marsh restoration and where it should be prioritized in the Albemarle Pamlico estuary. And as you can see, our project site is in an area that they've deemed to be a high area with a score high enough to be able that it should be restored when possible. To give you an idea of what our project site looks like, over here on the left, this is Long Island. These fragmented islands right here is on just to the east of the Great Narrows, which is off to the west a little bit. You can see a vast expanse of open water, and then the fragmented islands that surround the channel. Giving you a second view of this, this was taken in November of 2021. We're looking to the southeast. This is Long Island here in the front, and our project site is the water body between the fragmented islands and Long Island. Got a little video to share with y'all. Before I hit the video, I want you to notice you don't see much in the way of subaqueous vegetation. You can also see where the islands are starting to fragment, and you're starting to lose via erosion the island portions of the island. And as you lose those portions of the island, you start creating a better pathway for the water to be able to push forward. Allows the water to be able to break up the island more, causing more erosion, causes turbidity. The turbidity causes you not to be able to grow subaqueous vegetation. Second video I'm going to show you, the boat is what was controlling the drone. You can see there is some subaqueous vegetation located along some of the islands, but notice not much total, about 15% coverage at most within the project area site. And one of the things that I want to point out with this video is that the wind was blowing from the south. So you can see the waves that are starting to form and the water being pushed up into the bay. So as that water hits these islands, it starts causing erosion. It starts causing the turbidity. So you don't have very clear water to be able to allow subaqueous vegetation to be able to continue to grow. So we did look at what would happen if we did not do anything. We used the sea level affecting marshes model called SLAM to simulate a future if no action is taken. The map on the left shows today's conditions at the project site. We can see the channel has opened, which is serving as a flood pathway into the northern part of the bay. The map on the right shows what could happen in the future with 3 foot of sea level rise, where the broken marsh results in even more dramatic flood pathways. If we do nothing, the marsh island habitat could transform into open water area with broken marshes that have minimal capacity to attenuate waves and water velocities during wind type events, which would further increase our fetch exposure. That is the effect of the winds to be able to create waves and be able to cause additional erosion from occurring. So our plan is to create 41 individual marsh terraces totaling approximately 27,000 linear feet. We'll create about 51 acres worth of new wetlands. We do have 15-foot wide and 30-foot wide islands that we're constructing. 33 acres of estuarine wetlands will be created, and we're going to plant over 130,000 native plants. By creating this, we're looking at approximately 310 acres of suitable subaqueous vegetation habitat being created between the islands. So why did we pick marsh islands? Marsh islands have been done in the Gulf Coast for a number of years. As Mary Carson mentioned, it is not something that has ever been attempted anywhere really outside of the Gulf Coast. So our primary goal of this project is to add resilience to backway through strategically restoring and creating new marsh island habitat to maximize habitat diversity and protect the ends of the new marshes from continuing erosion during wind type events. In turn, the restored vegetative and protective features will provide a host of other co-benefits, including promoting reestablishment of aquatic vegetation, reduction of wave heights and water velocities through the project area during wind tide events, and create recreational opportunities as the fish and wildlife species that used to be abundant in Back Bay will populate the reclaimed habitat. As opposed to one continuous marsh platform, terraces optimize the amount of marsh edge, which is highly valuable real estate to a variety of species, which you can see in the cross-section graphic. Along the terrace edges, fish find food and nursery habitat, and ducks feed on the aquatic grasses that often grow between the terraces. Marsh grasses on the top of the terraces provide nesting cover for waterfowl and resting perches for migratory birds. Primary benefits that we're going to establish with this project include strategically restoring and creating new marsh island habitat and providing and protecting the edges of the new marshes from erosion. Some of the co-benefits will be, of course, the establishment of aquatic vegetation habitat, reducing wave height and water velocities, recruiting fish and wildlife, and providing recreational opportunities to our citizens. Talk a little about the data collection and the design that has been done. MAP Environmental completed a survey of the marshes within Bonnie Cove to understand existing species present in the project area. Not surprisingly, most of the low marshes have been overtaken by the common invasive reeds Phragmites. They did observe some species diversity of native species such as salt meadow hay, black needle rush, salt marsh cordgrass, bald cypress, mostly on Long Island. One of our design goals will be to focus on the native vegetation that are performing well in Back Bay and improve the species diversity. MAP Environmental also surveyed the aquatic vegetation within the project area. Overall, there is a low abundance. It's hard to see the numbers in the figure, but they range from 0 to 30% coverage. Most of the grass is Eurasian water milfoil, which some diversity of other types of grass such as widgeon grass and eelgrass. We did take the bathymetric survey of Back Bay that was done in 1885 and update it with surveys. What we noticed was there was an overall transition to deeper water, but mostly we have shallow areas of water to be able to allow for the growth of subaqueous vegetation. As part of our effort, we have done some modeling. The results of the modeling show that the water levels will reduce during a sustained water event. This has caused widespread flooding in the Back Bay region. The model showed that water levels to the north of the project will be reduced by up to 0.2 of a foot. Although not directly quantified during the modeling effort, the observed elevation reductions during the design event represent considerable benefits in reducing water flow into northern Back Bay. It is estimated that flow reduction pathways is equivalent to 22.4 to 44.7 million cubic feet of water. That's equal to 380 Olympic-sized swimming pools or 3 million bathtubs full of water. Although a reduction of 0.2 may seem relatively small, in 2020-2021, the city evaluated other strategies to reduce water levels at the same point of reduction in the bay. A $500 million pump station with 12 2,000 horsepower pumps was one of the proposed solutions to reduce water levels during the same event by 1.5 feet. The water reduction with the terraces reaches 13% of that goal for a much lower cost. And the terraces provided a value of $66.7 million compared directly to the pump station in terms of water level reduction. Another benefit will be wave height reduction. Marsh terraces are expected to reduce the wave heights within the project area by approximately 45%. This reduction is consistent with other field studies, which have found that average wave heights within other terrace sites were 37 to 48% lower than what was observed at the reference site. Wave energy reduction is anticipated to increase the potential for sediment deposition on the terrace's leeward side, leading to the growth of new emergent marsh and reducing erosion of the adjacent marshes. Approximately 5 miles of marsh island shoreline around Bonnie Cove will benefit directly from the erosion reduction associated with the wave attenuation. From a flow velocity standpoint, the marsh terraces reduce the velocity within the project area. This reduction of velocity will reduce bottom shear stress, which will decrease turbidity, increase light penetration into the water column, and promote the growth of SAB. Field studies of marsh terraces in Texas and Louisiana documented approximately 45 to 56% reduction in turbidity and the emergence of SAB in the years following terrace construction. Although not included as a parameter within the numerical modeling effort, we are planning on building some bald cypresses on the 30-foot wide terraces, which we planted in the middle of the site to help reduce wind speed within the project site. This will further reduce wind-generated waves within the project site on the terrace leeward and windward sides. Research shows that trees that grow up to be at least 30 feet at maturity result in lower wind speeds from 60 to 150 feet on the windward side and up to 900 feet on the leeward side. The model simulations also show that the project would also delay the timing of when the peak flood event is reached during a southerly wind event. Along Muddy Creek Road, for example, the model simulates show that the project will delay the peak flooding by approximately 30 hours. There are multiple benefits from this delay. Flood impacts could be avoided altogether for shorter duration wind events, which is a common occurrence. The delay would also allow the city and residents more time to prepare for a flood event and reduce impacts. We want to talk a little bit about geotechnical survey. We wanted to make sure that we knew what type of soils were out there where we were going to build the terraces at, because we know that there's going to be settlement that occurs. We had to hire a firm called Geoengineers out of Louisiana to come do the work. What you see in the picture is actually a airboat mounted drill rig, which no one in Virginia seems to have. So what they were able to do was go attain the soils information. And as we're designing the project, we're using that information to make sure we design the top of the terraces to account for any settlement that may occur by installing the terraces, in addition to allowing the top of the terraces to be able to be designed for 1.5 feet of sea level rise. To give you an idea what the typical section looks like, we have 5 different planting layouts for the terraces for species diversity. The base of the terraces will be constructed of what we call a geobag filled with a sand slurry, and then it's capped with a topsoil type material. One of the concerns that we heard from VIMS when we preliminarily talked to them and VMRC regarding our proposed project was they didn't really want to see us do dredging. So we have a project that's currently under construction at the northern part of Back Bay. It is called Nemo Parkway Phase 7A, which runs from Sandpiper Road to about half a mile west of the Sandbridge area. And as part of that, we've got about 40,000 cubic yards of topsoil material that we're pulling out of the bay. We're going to sift that material, make sure we get all the seeds, make sure we get all the plants out of it. We're going to stockpile it, and then we're going to bring that material in to use as the cap. Because the biggest concern the VMRC and VIMS had was bringing material that's not native to the area. So we think we found an innovative solution to be able to come to that. So these are another examples of some of the plantings. And then for the 30-foot wide terraces, we have spaced the geobags further apart to allow the trees to be able to grow roots down into the terrace area. One of the big questions that keeps coming up with this is, how are you going to get out there to do the work, since you are at closest 1.5 miles from any land with a road? So we have looked at a project site off of Ship's Cabin Road that we're looking to acquire a piece of property. We would acquire the property to be able to build our construction staging area. The construction staging area would allow us to be able to pump the sand slurry mix out to the geobags. To give you an idea of what that staging area looks like, stockpile areas up here in the laydown yard. We would have the slurry basins built right next to the stockpiles and would run the force main pipe out all the way out to the project site with booster pumps in between to be able to make sure the slurry mix doesn't stop moving. We do have a staging area, and we're looking at maybe doing some type of temporary floating dock so that when we have to take the geobags out or the dredge material from the Sandbridge site, we would be able to load those on and be able to get them out to the project site. For implementation purposes, first we'll talk about funding. This is This project is part of the city's flood protection program. It's $40 million in the flood protection program for stormwater green infrastructure master projects, which includes not just this project, but a Elizabeth River wetland and floodplain restoration project that we're doing. As I mentioned earlier, we received $135,000 from NIFWIF for design, and recently have received $9.88 million to apply towards the construction. What we managed to complete at this point in time is met with the stakeholder scoping workshop. That was our meeting with all the regulatory agencies to make sure any issues they may have, we can try to find out those early and make sure we come up with good solutions. We have finished our data collection, had our 30% public meeting, and completed our 60% design and the 90% design for the marsh terraces and the construction staging area. Actually, I can give you an update on that. We received the 60% submittal on that yesterday. The plan is to submit the permit application to VMRC in June, complete the design, look to have the permits and advertise this project later this year, select the contractor to be able to start work in February of 2024. We are anticipating this is going to be a 3-year construction period because there is a construction moratorium in Back Bay between November 1st and the end of February each year for the migratory bird pathways. Don't want to be out there constructing while the migratory birds are flying by. So for the first year, we're going to take from May of 2024 to February 2025 because the construction staging area is outside the proclamation boundary. We're going to get everything set up so that on March 1st of 2025, we can start building the first 20 terraces. Finish those terraces by the end of October of 2025. And in March of 2026, we would start construction on the remaining 21 terraces to be completed by October. And then we would enter into our post-construction monitoring plan, which we're anticipating will be 5 years. Provide you our contact information. Christina Searles is actually the project manager for this. I'm the program manager, and Tony Utterback is the director or the administrator of the Stormwater Engineering Center. As I mentioned, Brian Batten is the project manager for Dewberry, and Dave Tiller is the lead engineering design. You can click on that QR code, and I'll leave that up for a few seconds so that you guys have a chance if you want to click on it, and that will take you to the actual webpage for our project site. And now I will be more than happy to take any questions that you all may have.
Thank you so much, CJ. I told y'all it's the coolest project, right?
It is one of my favorite projects.
Ever, right? It is amazing. Okay, so any questions for CJ? No questions about this crazy massive project. So 1.5 feet. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just curious, CJ, if you could talk a little bit about how the public outreach for this particular project has gone with residents and citizens, and what the response has been, maybe a little bit about how you've messaged it, since it is a pretty innovative project for the region.
Caroline, thank you for the question. And I should mention also that this project is listed as one of the exemplary projects in the state's coastal master plan. I forgot to mention that earlier. From a community standpoint, we've had multiple meetings. Back in 2019, we had four sets of meetings just to discuss with the residents down in the southern part of the city. What do they thought were options of what we could do? And there's an entirely different presentation that talks about that evaluation. They all love the idea of the marsh terraces. It's a green infrastructure. We do have a couple people that are concerned, you know, we're going to create more habitat for nutria to be able to attack. There are concerns with what we originally proposed, which was doing some dredging in the Back Bay, which we're not going to impact now. And then they want to just make sure that if they can still get their boats around while we're doing the construction. So we've looked at how we can take our slurry pipeline and be able to submerge it in some locations so that it will We'll give them boat crossings. But for the most part, they're all excited because they realize it's going to create more habitat. It's going to allow the fish to be able to come back stronger, which is there's a notable decline in the amount of fish in Back Bay. We are also working with Virginia Tech, Dr. Sarah Sweeten at Virginia Tech, on a project to look at how to get the celery grass to grow back in Back Bay. She's come up with some innovative solutions. The problem is the good thing about celery grass, everything likes the celery grass. The bad thing about the celery grass is everything likes the celery grass. So we're trying to figure out how we can get it to grow outside of some cages. But the residents have been all excited for it. And the first question I usually get is, when are you starting construction?
Thanks, really interesting.
Tom, go ahead.
Yeah, a couple of questions. I want to ask the first question. Are there specialty contractors that are experienced in doing this type of work in the area?
There are a number of them down in the Gulf Coast. But what we found from discussing this with various contractors is there's going to be dredging contractors who are going to be interested in this just because they already have the equipment. It's on the water. It's not something we're looking at. It's got to be somebody who only has done this type of work. And we want to make sure we did something that we would have multiple people to be able to bid on it.
So the second question kind of comes from the first. Were there any experienced contractors that were part of the design team?
We have talked to a number of contractors in the Gulf Coast. We have talked to a number of engineering firms in the Gulf Coast who have designed these to get their input, because as Mary Carson mentioned earlier, this is what we're calling our pilot project. We have a number of other areas in Back Bay that if this project works, we may want to do additional terrace projects. This is applicable also, if it works here in Back Bay, it'll work down in the Albemarle Pamlico, it'll work on the backside of the Eastern Shore. It could work up in New Jersey on the western side of the New Jersey. So there are a number of locations that we were hoping this will transfer to and become something that'll be another tool in the toolkit for people to be able to build resiliency.
Cool. So just one more comment. About 30, 40 years ago, I saw a project that was very similar to this. It was a shoreline preservation project, and the design involved placing cinder blocks in kind of a pyramid, in long lines, kind of a pyramid stack fashion, where the open cells of the cinder blocks were facing outward towards the wave. And the designer called it a sand grabber system. And the way it worked was the waves would impact the cinder blocks, and it would slow the velocity down with the water just enough to drop the sand. And after a period of time, those cinder blocks were buried in the sand. Have you ever seen a similar type of project like that?
I did hear about that project, and it's, from what I understand, it has thrived. We are going to put some riprap on the windward sides of the southernmost islands because we don't want it to erode away. To be able to provide some type of protection, but we anticipate that riprap ultimately is going to become sand and marsh as we move forward.
Thanks. Cool.
Any other questions for CJ? One of the things that I think is so interesting about this project is the way in which the multiple benefits can be framed. I mean, obviously, the flood reduction benefits are so important to quantify. The wave attenuation benefits, so important. But the habitat benefits are really impressive with this design. I think particularly because it does include trees, right? And that will have a huge impact in the nesting capacity of the terraces. And I don't know if y'all know this about Back Bay, but it is intended to be, and has been for some time, like a bird hotel, right? That's how I was a kayak guide back in Back Bay, and this is what we were told to say. But it's essentially designed to be a migratory stop, and it's supposed to be a hospitable resort for our birds to have a rest. And so the ability to create the additional habitat for the migratory birds as they stop on their way down and on their way up, it's just really cool. And it's kind of like return to the roots. And I don't know if CJ, you all included that kind of narrative in your application for NIFWIF, but to me, it's just the perfect storm of all the benefits tied nicely together into one neat package.
We did include that in our design aspect when we requested the design. I will freely admit the first time we submitted, we did not get the design. We submitted in 2018, we did not get selected. We talked to the NIFWIF people afterwards, kind of a debrief, and they told us a couple things they would like for us to see to add to it, which we did for 2019's application, which was accepted. And that's one of the things that's been great to work with NIFWIF is they will give you good beneficial comments on your application, and they've been very, very, very great to work with.
That's so nice. Well, and as you all know, and as we're going to keep talking about for the next 7 years to come, there is an unprecedented amount of money coming from the federal government that is going to be pumped into NIFWIF. $147 million a year is what NIFWIF is going to be investing in projects like this. You can apply for the money to actually finance the planning of projects like this. And then you can also apply for the money to implement the projects like this. So now is the time to think creatively and to look at projects that are a little bit out of the box, because NIFWIF is probably going to be more comfortable funding unusual or pilot projects like this because they can, their pocketbook can take the hit. They have so much money right now. So great call to action. There is a question. There are 2 questions in the chat. Mike has asked about the funding. So I think CJ, you obviously mentioned this before, but maybe just a quick breakdown of the cost from each bucket.
Right now, we have for construction, $9.88 million from NIFWIF. The remaining $34.5 million that we're going to spend is coming out of the city's flood protection fund, which is the bond referendum that our citizens voted on in 2021 to approve $567.5 million worth of bonds for flood benefits within the city. For 41 specific projects, and that was approved by our citizens by 72%.
So amazing. And then Julie Floyd has asked, will there be artificial reefs incorporated into the structures?
We have not at this point in time, only because oysters are not native, and generally when we see those reefs getting built, they're places you want to be able to grow oysters on them. And since it's not native and it's not a saltwater body, it's brackish, but it doesn't have enough salt contained in Back Bay in order to be able to sustain oysters.
So there will be, as CJ said, riprap incorporated in the southernmost terraces and along the islands to help with wave attenuation to give these plants a fighting chance. They are going to be planted during hurricane season. Of course, it's unavoidable, that's the planting season, but having that first line of protection from waves, I think is important.
And one of the reasons we went with riprap instead of doing some type of breakwater or artificial reef is we realized there are going to be people, as it shows in the picture, there's going to be people out there with their boats. And anytime you put those artificial reefs in, unless you have a way to mark them, it's something that could impact somebody's boat, and we don't want to damage people's personal property.
Yeah, good point. This is highly recreational back here. Super. CJ, thank you so much. Thanks to the Virginia Beach team for sharing your time with us. We really appreciate it.
Well, thank you all very much for having me. And if there's any questions, please feel free to reach out to us, and we'll be happy to answer anything you may have.
All right, cool. Thank you.
Mayor Carson, I do have one last thing to just say for the NIFWIF, just so everybody understands. NIFWIF has what they call 3 different phases. Phase 1 would be your planning stage, phase 2 would be your design stage, and phase 3 would be your construction phase. If you can get in at phase 1, they consider you what's called a pipelined project. So if you can get in at phase 1 or phase 2, what that allows you to be able to do is it puts you in the driver's seat to get funding for phase 2 or phase 3.
Yeah, that's a huge benefit and will really help with, capacity issues at the local level to see a project start to finish. It's really a great time to take advantage of these federal resources.
It absolutely is that.
All right, wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. I'm going to go jump into my other meeting, and I hope you all have a great rest of your meeting.
Thank you, CJ.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So we have a couple issues that we want to talk about and use this opportunity to soundboard and talk through some stuff that's just come to Wetlands Watch's attention through inquiries from our partners up and down the coast and a little bit inland too. So I hate to be the one to revisit what was a very dark time for floodplain management in Hampton Roads, but we're going to. So that, as y'all may recall or may not recall, several years ago, the city of Hampton was going through a CAV, a community assistance visit. And a community assistance visit is basically when FEMA comes in to a locality that's participating in a national flood insurance program and says, okay, we're visiting, we need to make sure that you all are following all the things that you're supposed to be doing as participating in FIP communities. And that basically means that you are following the Code of Federal Regulation and implementing the minimum floodplain standards for essentially like land use development. And as part of that CAV, FEMA Region 3 noted that the city of Hampton was not permitting all development in the floodplain. And this sent off a ton of alarm bells because nobody was permitting all development in the floodplain in the way that FEMA was defining development. So FEMA defined development as any modification to the flood zone, any modification to the special flood hazard area. That any modification included installation of a mailbox. It included changing out light fixtures in your home, putting mulch on a flower bed, right? These are the exaggerated examples that came out of this big discussion with FEMA. And there's nothing wrong with how Hampton was doing this. They were just the locality that was in the crosshairs of this conversation. Because of this, localities in our region obviously pushed back on FEMA's understanding of development and the burden of requiring property owners to get permits for things that are really routine maintenance on their properties. And after much discussion and we would call llama drama in our household, what was created is a kind of, not a bypass of that, but a recognition of how things actually work between a property owner trying to do something on their property and FEMA's requirements, which are of course important to reduce the impacts and damage during a flood. So happy medium compromise. What came out of this was a kind of review process for the city of Hampton. And they created a list of a list of activities that don't require a permit per se. And this list of things is really, you know, the small modifications to a parcel that we just mentioned. And this process was deemed appropriate and acceptable to FEMA. And this is not the full document, actually. Shoot. Okay. So I don't have access to the documents right now. So what I want to talk about is basically where localities are in the process of providing this type of not workaround, but this type of a, yes, we understand that all development in the special flood hazard area could have a potential impact on flood risks, but there are certain activities that will not impact flood risk. And so therefore, the typical permitting process does not need to be followed in the exact same way. So my question is, our communities, like after that happened, did all of you use the City of Hampton's examples that they created and adopt them within your own community to meet this requirement? Anybody? You don't know? So Tom Cockhill will handle that mostly for James City County.
Yeah, let me lower my hand, but we had a meeting yesterday. FEMA DCR did this.
Mary Carson, can you hear me?
Yes.
Mary Carson, can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm not sure.
I can hear you.
Who do you want to go first?
Go ahead, Tom, and then Kristen.
Okay, so yesterday DCR and FEMA did a online course of all day, Advanced Floodplain Management Concepts. And a lot of the folks in Maryland were really having the same question of any development, what does that mean? Painting, cabinets, you know, if I put my trash can in the backyard. So there weren't really a lot of good answers coming out of FEMA. They were kind of dancing around the topic, but yes, I have been talking to Steve Shapiro, as have all the building officials in the Tidewater region. We meet every other month, and this topic's come up a number of times. So I believe we're fairly consistent in the types of things that we advertise on our website that need floodplain permits. As a matter of fact, James City County's floodplain website was shown as one of the examples of how to do it right. So I was really proud of that.
Okay. Go ahead, Kristen. And I found the document that we're going to add it to the next slide, so I'll be able to show it. Kristen, go ahead. Uh-oh, now I can't hear you. Kristen? Okay. So has anybody calved recently? Who's done a calve? I think City of Virginia Beach calved somewhat recently. No. City of Norfolk, no. Kristen did calve. Oh, here she comes back in the room.
Virginia Beach calves in mid-May.
Yes. Oh, right, of course. It's coming up for you. So I think, Whitney, it would be good to hear from you about what what the city of Virginia Beach has planned to do to address this issue. And then I know, Kristen, you just popped back on, so I don't know if you want to say something.
Kristen, you can go first.
Kristen's having technical.
Okay, I'll go. So what, we'll see what happens, but what we've always done is we've said every single development review that we do as a city is part of our floodplain permit. So when you submit a JPA for your pier, your dock, your shoreline project, that's a permit. When you submit a preliminary project review in the CVPA, that counts as a permit. When you submit something for a site plan, that counts as a permit. And then we do have a separate floodplain permit for anything else. In particular, if someone calls to inquire about some kind of development activity in the floodplain, or if we find a violation for something that wouldn't get a permit through our other processes, but does still need a floodplain permit, we can do it through that process, which is basically just creating a record. There's no cost associated with it. It just creates a permit record so we can say, hey, we did review this development.
And so what about the kind of small stuff? Do you have a document that shows the differences between them?
We don't have any kind of document. It's kind of if someone inquires about it, we can issue a permit for it to say we reviewed it, but it's not something we're going to go looking for.
Right, not going to go looking for. And have you talked with FEMA or DCR about your method prior to this CAB that's coming up, or will you talk about it during the CAB?
I'm sure we will discuss it during the CAB.
Okay, yeah, that's interesting. I'll be curious to know if they will find that approach acceptable based on what, I think other communities have had to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing for us, so I limited our permits like that we have to submit to them for review. I limited it to basically new development and substantial improvements for projects in the floodplain because they wanted me to go back 10 years. And if I just do new development and substantial improvements going back 3 years, I already have 5,000 permit records.
Right.
So I flat out told them, I'm like, no, we're not pulling all of that because it's not helpful for you or me to do that exercise.
Yeah. Okay.
So ours is definitely just a sheer size of the city and volume that we'd be looking at.
Right. Okay. Okay.
Hi, Kristen. This is Kristen. Can you hear me?
Yes, can hear.
I was trying to say this before, but then my computer just shut down randomly. So I only heard the end of what Whitney said, but we have a general permit. And I can probably add some context too, since I was part of the group that helped with the Hampton list as well. Because none of the people that approved that are still there except Mari, who is on a different set of things at FEMA. So we have one that's for small things that has a general permit. So we don't use language that it's exempt. It's just covered under this community-wide general permit. When Hampton was allowed to do this, one of the caveats was that they had to show that they looked into the potential impact of these types of development that were on the list. And so for the city of Hampton, this was relatively easy because they only have coastal flood zones or AE zones with a floodway. So the documentation that they sent to FEMA to support it was literally a letter from their engineer referencing FEMA studies saying, based on your own studies, this won't cause an impact because it's in the flood fringe outside of a floodway, or it's in a coastal zone and it won't have an impact on the ocean or the bay. So that was one of the requirements of when they got it approved, was they had to have the letter or the list, but they also had to have something like technical tying it back to, the flood risk, showing that it wasn't going to cause an impact. And at the time, we had a conversation with them and said, well, if that's the case, then this isn't going to be applicable to a lot of communities, because if you only have A zones that didn't have models, there's really no way to show that you've looked into the impacts, because you would have to model all of your floodplains to do that. And at the time, they basically agreed, and it was like, so this could work for communities that have detailed studies with floodways, or if they have their own models, or if they're coastal zones, or maybe it could work for portions of a community if you could get away with legally allowing, general permit for only a part of the community versus the whole community. And I think that's why it didn't really go anywhere with a lot of localities at the time, because some of the other communities in Hampton Roads already had a permitting system in place. And we had talked about, like, this isn't policing, it's more of have a process if someone asks about it, but you're not, like, you don't have to go out and hunt people down for it. And then in the rest of the state, most of those localities didn't have floodplains where they would have data to be able to do this. But we did it, and we were able to do it because we have models for every single one of our floodplains. So what we did was and I worked with FEMA kind of through this process, although the FEMA people there are not there now with Region 3. But we went through and we updated our ordinance. We created a general permit. We looked at the city of Hampton's list. We did not use it like exactly, because some of the things that they use, like they use some of the Chesapeake Bay limits, like the size disturbance limits, like the 2,500 square feet and everything. And we felt like that doesn't work for us because our floodplains are different, and that could have an impact on our floodplain. So we took some things, like some of the items that are excluded from the building code, like the internal renovations, like changing cabinets, things like that. So we looked at theirs, and we looked at other permits from other localities, like outside of Virginia, like Charlotte Mecklenburg in North Carolina has like a general permit, and some other localities. So we looked at those, and we kind of picked things that we felt like would be things that we would get in the county here, but also things that we could look at that we felt like wouldn't cause an impact. And then we excluded all of the other stuff. And then we tweaked some of it, like on Hampton, they just talk about, replacement windows, replacement doors, and things like that. And it's kind of open-ended. And in Charlotte Mecklenburg, they had a price, like a dollar amount on it. And so that's what we did. We said, like, in these internal renovations, as long as they're less than $10,000, because we looked at like our assessed values of all of the buildings in the floodplain, and there's no way that any project that's $10,000 would trigger a substantial improvement, like zero. There's just no way that would ever happen with the assessed values of our properties. So we could probably have gone higher. And we went back and forth on doing a percentage versus a dollar amount, because FEMA, like when we were working on all of this with FEMA back in the day, they were kind of on the fence about that. Like they weren't quite comfortable with 40% because there could still be enough flexibility that could be a substantial improvement. And so they wanted it to go lower. And when we were talking about it, just administratively, it was going to be so much harder to use a percentage instead of a dollar amount, because then we would have to look at every single thing and figure out, like, is this 20% of your property value? So we went with just a dollar amount, and we chose 10,000 because we knew that was low enough that it would never trigger anything. And that would get a lot of the really small building permit type things out of the way that are almost entirely internal anyway, that would never cause a problem with flooding. And then we did other small stuff, like lawn maintenance, road, you know, like repaving, like pothole fixes, painting of lines, things like that. And we wrote our guidance manual and explained some of it in that. And then we like explained to them with our engineer, you know, he looked at it with our like models and everything and gave his professional opinion basically that these would not cause an issue. But ours was it was a whole package they looked at. It was our ordinance, our higher standards, the guidance manual, the modeling, and like the process that we use, and that's how we got it approved. So we went back and forth with FEMA when we were doing it, but then they did a complete like review of it during our CAV as well, to make sure that they were okay with everything. Okay, so that's cool. How we got it approved. It's not just a list, it's like a whole thing.
Okay. Yeah, and the process that the FEMA wants to see is a RAD, R-A-D, review, assess, and document procedure. And that's, you know, for these small projects. So I think that, you know, as communities are beginning to CAV, if this issue comes up, please know that there are examples that you can use to help meet the compliance standards that FEMA has set. So the Franklin documentation will be posted on the CRS Workgroup website. The City of Hampton documentation, including letters and FEMA approval and all that stuff, will be included on the Coastal Virginia CRS Workgroup. Kristen, if you're willing to share the resources that you all created that does include the dollar amounts and stuff like that, it would be great if we could post that on the website for local staff to use as well.
Yeah, can you, do you mind just linking to our link? Because ours, like, well, I have to make a couple other edits to our stuff, so I'm gonna make sure our link like updates automatically. So I'm gonna make sure people have access to the most current version, so we don't have to keep updating on your end.
Oh yeah, that's great, no worries.
I was just about to ask.
Okay, yeah, I'll just send you the link.
Okay, cool. Okay, good. Well, I'm glad that, you know, you all have done so much legwork. City of Franklin, City of Hampton, Henrico County, thank you for being so diligent and sticking with getting this RAD process into something that's in a usable format and acceptable to FEMA. I will tell you that the Middle Peninsula in particular, a lot of those communities are about to cycle and they want to ensure that they're following the compliance guidelines and following the process that's been accepted by FEMA Region 3. So this is helpful discussion. Thanks for sticking with us as we talk the details.
Is there a schedule posted anywhere for when communities are going to have a CAV through FEMA?
You know, that's a good question. I don't know, but we can ask to receive that. That would probably be helpful. I don't know how far out they have them scheduled, but a good sense would be extremely helpful. Yep. I've launched the poll again. So sorry, you have to answer all the questions, but to be clear, we're looking at, I think the poll number 2 is really what we're looking at. Ever so quickly, Wetlands Watch offers 5-hour intensive CRS NFIP training. We come to your locality. If you are located in the coastal zone as defined by the Coastal Zone Management Program, come to your community, we give you lunch. This is only available for non-CRS participating localities, and you do have to be in the coastal zone because the Virginia Coastal Zone Management Program is generously paying for Wetlands Watch's time to do this, as well as resources to make the training happen. So that's what this poll is about. And then number 3 is has your locality followed a similar development permit documentation process? We will follow up with you individually if you answered yes, to ask if we can also post your documentation and your process on the CRS Workgroup website. So this is all about information sharing, so we can get that information out to everybody. I'm sorry, Ben, I didn't see you have your hand up. Go ahead.
That's all right, MC. I just wanted to chime in on something, or follow up on some of the comments that Kristen had. I was part of the meeting that FEMA Region 3 had with the Middle Peninsula communities a couple of months ago, and yeah, I get the vibe, and I saw that we have some folks from FEMA on the line right now, but that this is the process that it's not meant to be easy, that they really want communities, if they're going to do this RAD, to really go in and document, understand what their flood risks are. And so we've been working on a grant proposal with CZM to kind of put together kind of a process for how communities might be able to do that, what steps they would have to take, what level of analysis and consideration they would have to look into to understand what their flood risks are and how that might affect the requirement for individual permits, as opposed to having general permits or pre-permitted activities that have, limited or no impact on the floodplain. And that's going to start, if that, takes place, it will start in October. So the timing is not great for a lot of communities that are having their calves in the near future. But moving forward, I think that's something that, we think could have a lot of benefit for coastal Virginia communities. And I think the process would be the same for inland communities as well. It's more of a general process of doing the work as Henrico County has done, understanding what the models and the analysis that show your floodplain and your flood risks are, what they're telling you, what they're not telling you, what level of quality you need, things like that. So we'll have more information on that later in the year.
That is great. That is really helpful. Thank you, Ben. Okay. All right, so in a somewhat related topic, as you all are probably aware, the city of Norfolk is moving forward with a really tremendous project, huge in scale, flood wall with the Army Corps of Engineers. As we have worked with the Corps and the city to understand the flood wall and the value that it will provide for protection against coastal storms, it has brought up a couple questions about kind of deferred or redirection of water during our storm events. And particularly knowing that in Hampton Roads and certainly in Norfolk, the impacts of certain storms are different than others, right? So hurricane impacts and nor'easter impacts, all about wind direction. So southerly winds have a really, really big difference in terms of emptying out some of our river and tributaries and then inundating them significantly. And so we would be very interested in convening a discussion group on the impacts of where the water goes during storm events. And this is not intended to have some preconceived opinion about where the water goes. We really want to understand how this is a kind of a selfish thing, like our organization wants to understand how we should be speaking to the public about what the impacts are of having a flood barrier, a floodgate in one place versus another in the coastal context. And then in the riverine context, because we are coastal, absolutely, but many of our communities have coastal impacts as well as riverine flooding impacts. And it just makes it complicated when you're talking about it, because there are studies that have been done that show that coastal flood risk can be diffuse because of the scale of the water body that will absorb the excess flow, like the bay can handle, the ocean can handle it. So we want to really drill down and have a conversation about the existing literature from FEMA's perspective, some of the studies that have been conducted for this flood wall in particular in Norfolk. We'll definitely be looking into working with the engineers that have designed it and all that stuff. So if anybody wants to participate in this discussion group, we would love to have your participation. Please email, we don't have a poll on this, but email me or Madison, and we'll also send out a yes, I'm interested, no, I'm not. We'll survey monkey when we do a follow-up email on this meeting, especially those of you with engineering expertise like AMT over here with Jenny. It would be really helpful to have some good authority. There's also a lot of discussion that has happened in years past with our floodplain managers community. So for example, this is something that I know that Meg Pittenger from the city of Portsmouth has really been thinking about and talking about for years. And so we're gonna be sure that we include the people that have had a lot to say and have really thought about this for a number of years in that discussion too. So feel free to add your name in the chat, send me an email, whatever, but we'd like to talk about this. Okay, CRS training opportunities. I guess we reversed these slides, so we're just having technical difficulties today, y'all. Thanks for bearing with us. We've already talked about this. If you'd like to participate, fill out the chat, email me or Madison. We'd like to, we have one left for this year. So from spring until I think the last time we could possibly come would be in August. We can come to a community. So just one spot left. We can go experience. Okay, we already asked this fall. Okay. All right. A little bit more training opportunities. L273. This is the course that you take if you are interested in becoming a certified floodplain manager. So CFM, this is the course that gives you the background before you end up taking that class. L273, this is a deployed course. It's going to be in James City County at the end of this month. So please register. We're going to obviously send out the link in the PDF. You can find the information on the DCR floodplain training calendar. That's where all of these opportunities are listed with information about how to sign up. We need more CFMs in Virginia, and DCR has done a really nice job of ensuring that there are deployed opportunities for these classes all across the state. We hope that that will continue, that they'll continue making these courses available. It's a free class, just FYI, you just have to get there. One last training that's occurring that DCR is helping post is Advanced Concepts in Floodplain Management. If you haven't taken one of the Advanced Concepts course, this is a really great opportunity to kind of dive a little bit deeper into the minimum standards and in a kind of peer setting. At least the classes that I've been in, it's kind of like code of silence. People can talk freely about challenges that they're facing in doing floodplain management implementation in a community. This is a really, really good way to learn from peers and hear about how things are actually working in practice. So I would encourage you to participate. This is a virtual class. They do and have done field deploy classes. So if there's ever an opportunity for you to take a multi-day field deploy class, I would really recommend it. But this being every Tuesday makes it really convenient. And it's only, I think it's an hour or two, maybe 2 hours. It's the whole day. Oh, it's the whole day. Whole day. So nice to break it out. I don't think this is going to be the only time that these courses are offered. So we're going to be keeping our eye out, and we'll always alert you all when these classes come online. Association of State Floodplain Managers has an annual conference. I know that many of you know this, and many of you have participated. This year, it's really close by. And so you could, in theory, pop down and pop back up and sleep in your bed at night and, make that commute if you really wanted to. Registration is open. This is a great opportunity to network with people who are doing the same job that you're doing and to learn from floodplain professionals from across the country. There is a climate change resilience track in this conference, as there is now, and I think every ASFPM conference, because it's such a big deal. But, you know, there definitely would be a lot of coastal resilience, coastal flooding, as well as big riverine flooding component given its location in Raleigh. So North Carolina floodplain managers are a fun group. Should be a lot of fun. Okay. So I don't know if it's worth it to launch these polls. We're just going to have to beg Anita to give us grace with this stuff. So if you're planning on attending, you can change your vote now that you've been, you know, wooed to attend. All right. The CRS Viz website, this is basically how FEMA is putting out CRS data now in one place, thank goodness, and it's supposed to be more accurate, and so that's really good. As risk rating 2.0 rolls out, this data becomes even more important for us to understand how Virginia's policy counts are affected by risk rating 2.0 and how our CRS counts are concurrently affected by risk rating 2.0. So Madison has done a nice job of comparing October data to the data that was just released a couple days ago. You can see that we have had a decrease in policy count in the tune of 6,000. We expect and suspect that this decrease is our preferred risk policies going down, because preferred risk policies are no longer a thing in risk rating 2.0. They got rid of them. So if you have an elective policy, you don't have to have one, but you choose to have one, which should be every single person in Virginia, then you are now paying probably more than you were paying originally. And that's going to be a deterrent for our voluntary policies. And so we assume that that's why this number has gone down to the degree that it has. With this reduction in actual policies in force, you're obviously going to see a reduction in premiums. So pretty significant decrease there. And then unfortunately, the way that the CRS works is that you're only getting discounts if you have policies in place. And so we have seen a reduction. We were at the, you know, almost 6.5 million mark in CRS savings in Virginia, and we are now back to 5 million. So we will see how increases in premium cost or policy cost from risk rating 2.0's 8% and 25% glide path will impact this number of CRS savings, because what we think will happen is as policies get more expensive, CRS benefits will hopefully increase to be reflective of that increase in policy cost. But that's to be determined. We're really not sure how this is going to shake out, but we will be tracking, and we'll keep up with what the marketplace, what the individual policyholders are deciding to do with this new information.
And something else to note too is when we send these slides out that link to CRS Biz, it's really helpful. They also have a tab just for you to look at your locality data. So if you're wondering how many policies are still in place in just your locality and how many premiums are being paid in CRS savings, you can look at that by CRS participating as well.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. So general announcements, the Community Flood Preparedness Fund grant round 4, the grant manual release was supposed to be a while ago. It's been delayed. They're trying to also release the revolving Virginia Resilient Revolving Fund guidance at the same time, and there's just been delays in that release. So if you're looking for it and you haven't received it, that is why. We will send it around as soon as it's live.
I talked to Daryl Glover last week about a number of things, including this, and it's not going to be probably until the summer. Okay. Part of the delay has to do with, I guess, lack of a decision from the general assembly on how much money is in that resilience loan fund. Beside that, and so it's delayed until that.
So what Judy's talking about is the budget. Obviously, is not settled in Virginia, and part of what is in conflict is that there is you know, one part of the budget says 100 million included. The other part says half of that, 50 million, and then there's some discussion about no money. And so it is still in flux. I think we can expect that there will be some.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be no.
Yeah, 50. Yeah, at one point, let's discussion.
Yeah, but not
very much. Now it'll just be 50 or 100 million in year one, with zeroed out in year two. One of the options for 100.
Mary Carson, this has been. Can you just to clarify, because I couldn't hear everything that Jenny was saying, but that's for the revolving loan fund, right? Not the CFPO.
Oh yes, correct. Just for the revolving loan fund,
but it's specific to the resilience part.
Yes, the revolving loan fund is already been financed by 25 million, which is enough money to receive the Storm Act funds. I think it's just important that everybody realize that. It's the extra money that the governor's budget intended to put into the Virginia Resilient Revolving Loan Fund that is in question. And the conferees for the budget are discussing what the outcome will be.
Yeah, and the connection there, because the revolving loan fund money does not impact, in this instance, the CFPF money. The reason why it's delaying it is because DCR is wanting to release both manuals at the same time and run both programs at the same time to reduce the administrative burden. So allowing those loans and those grants to be available to localities at the same time.
I think they want to encourage more use of the loan. It's been underutilized in the past. They advocate for money, we put it in. No one wants to use the money, so they want to encourage localities to utilize the loan to meet the grant requirements.
Yes, no one's ever used them. It's never been an operation until now.
For the resilience.
It is a new fund, never been used. The resilient revolving loan fund is a separate bucket. Yep, and so they have to give it guardrails and instructions for how to use it. Yep. Okay. We are going to be doing, as we've mentioned in the past, online CRS training that will be activity specific. We asked you all, the members of this work group, to let us know what your top priorities were for us to create these specific activity training videos, and we're doing them. So you'll have them online, and we'll be letting you know about that probably at the next work group. Okay, so let's do report outs. Let's start first in the room. For those of you that are new, this is the time when everybody has an opportunity to share updates about anything that's going on in your community. You can bring up questions that haven't been answered in discussion. You can highlight, any future meeting ideas, or really anything that's going on in your community or in your organization related to flood risk. So we don't have anything. We've talked quite a lot. Maybe the only thing would be save the date for the Catch the King 2023, October 28th and 29th. Okay. All right, let's go around the room. Yeah. Jenny, you want to go first?
I don't really have anything.
Nothing going on?
No, nothing new.
For James City County, I think Mike already said he was introducing himself. We are supposed to be having our CRS review this year. We don't have a date on that yet. There's been chatter about trying to go to a forum, but I'm not sure where that stands. So someone more knowledgeable than me can certainly jump in.
Talking about class 4 for James City County. You can use your water, you can use your water to check. Yeah.
They're underway, but I'm not for the technical.
Ooh, there are people gunning for that class 4. Y'all gotta say it. Anybody else for Mike? Do you want to jump in? Tom, James City County. Christy's on there too. Oh, Christy's on there too.
I don't have anything.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add other than Deirdre's right. We hopefully can get to a class 4, but I don't know if the stars are going to align for us.
Oh, you're doing really great. Class 5.
I need that sound bite. Deirdre's right.
Deirdre's right. You said it.
Never happen again.
Hey, it's Christy. I don't have anything to add, but thank you.
Christy, you're always right too.
This is very
thank you.
It means nothing. Okay, and now Vito, do you have anything to update here?
None at the current time.
Okay, thanks for being.
I don't have any updates.
Okay, no updates from York County. All right, I see people have already raised their hands. I think that might be a good method, and then we can just unmute once people who raise their hands are done. So Kristen Owen from Henrico County.
We are having our verification visit on the 26th of this month. So if anybody has any tips or good vibes to send our way, please do so. Outside of Henrico County stuff though, for VFMA, we have the call for abstracts open now for this year's conference. The conference is November 13th and 14th at the Westin in Richmond again. And we also have the nomination form open for the 2023 Floodplain Management Award. So we'll keep them open probably like through August, I think. I need to go back and look at what our timeline was, but definitely start thinking of things, submitting abstracts. We've got enough space, I think, for like 3 different concurrent sessions. So we can have a lot of content at the conference if we get enough abstracts. So start thinking about that, submitting stuff, and same for the awards. So we have lots of people to give awards to. That's all I have.
That's great. Thank you. All right, Ben.
Just a few things. Let's see. We our Coastal Resiliency Work Group, we're going to have a virtual meeting on the 28th of this month. The top, we're going to be talking about our road sensor project that we're wrapping up. So we've been putting in sensors on roads around the region. We've got 20 sensors installed. So we'll be doing, an update on where that is and how to get that information. We'll also be having some briefings from the RISE groups, the companies that have just been awarded to get the funding from RISE to do the flood insurance of the future. Or, I'm sorry, I'm not getting that term quite right, but they're interested in reducing flood risk and flood insurance payouts. So if you're interested in partnering with any of those companies through that process, that will have that on the 28th as well. And then we're in the process right now. We've already contracted with AECOM to do the crosswalk for the regional hazard mitigation plan. So that's something that wasn't completed as part of that plan when it was finished, but it's underway right now. And we'll have it, when we have an update on where that is, we'll be sure to send that out. And then we received a grant from the Community Flood Preparedness Fund to do, look at our work that we're doing at the PDC and some other things that we could be doing in terms of how they would support local participation in the CRS. That contract, we have a task order solicitation that's out right now. We anticipate having a contract awarded for that middle of May. So looking forward to using this group and talking with you all and getting some good feedback and putting together some recommendations for how we might proceed as a region to improve our participation in the CRS. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ben is with the Hampton Roads Planning District Commission, just in case folks don't know who he is. Okay, Tom did raise his hand. Something else from James?
Yeah, thanks. I just noticed that Ken Somerset put a message in the chat about the ASFPM board elections. Pretty interesting. We should definitely support that.
Okay, so Ken has said, right there. ASFBM board elections very soon. BFMA has a few members nominated for different positions, so that's cool. If you are a member, please vote. Virginia is moving the district within ASFBM, and the chance to make an impact is now here. Okay, so your vote will make a difference. Thank you, Ken. I haven't looked at that. Okay. The session presentation yesterday, yeah, it was really good. Good. Thank you, BFMA, for doing that. Anything else? Anybody else want to raise their hand or just unmute an update? No updates. We have never ended this early, ever. Any other updates that we missed that are important for people to know in this space? From the state, national updates. Okay. All right, that's it. That's a wrap. Thank you all so much. Mark this, and everyone recall, we have finished a meeting early, even though just 10 minutes early. Thanks for being here, everybody. Let us know if you have any questions, and we'll follow up with materials promised.
Thank you.
Thank you.